Gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the universe, here in this great hall of justice, are the most powerful forces of good ever assembled.
I'm Batman.
Easy, miss. I've got you.
You've got me! Who's got you?
Dooby-dooby-doo, where are you? We got some work to do now. Wonder Woman! Wonder Woman!
Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
I'm Conor MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod. I was born in 1518 in the village of Glenfinnan on the shores of Loch Shiel. I am immortal.
I'm Captain Kirk.
I'm a doctor. But probably not the one you expected.
Welcome everyone to a special Geek This Week presentation, and this is the Creature from Black Lagoon panel from Pensacon 2017 at the Pensacola Little Theater in Pensacola, Florida. Ricou Browning, he played the creature in all three movies in the underwater scenes, and he is the only living actor to have played a classic Universal monster. Creature from the Black Lagoon is my favorite Universal monster movie of all time. I just love the movie, and it was such a great honor to get to meet Ricou Browning in person and to get his autograph and to get, as you see here, get my picture with him. He talks about how he got the how it came about him getting the role of the creature for the underwater scenes. He talks about his post career after the creature films, and also talks about his directorial work for underwater directorial work he's done, including the famous James Bond film Thunderball. So please sit back and enjoy this special presentation. This is the Creature from the Black Lagoon panel, Ricou Browning, from Pensacon 2017 at the Pensacola Little Theater in Pensacola, Florida. Also, please don't forget to leave a like on this video and check out all the other videos. But for now, sit back and enjoy.
Ask that you line up over there and just speak closely to the microphone so everyone can hear you. Please keep your questions concise so we can get to everybody who has questions. After the panel, or after the screening, you guys will need to exit the building as there are not any more activities here tonight after the film screening is over. Okay? Well, we have a great panel for you tonight. We have a esteemed film historian, Mr. David Skull, who is an expert in all Universal monsters, including the Creature from the Black Lagoon. He did the special features on the first DVD, so he will be moderating this panel for Mr. Ricou Browning, the creature himself. And I'll get to
these working? Can you?
Yes.
Is the mic on?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you all for coming. This is the first time Ricou and I have gotten together in 18 years. I was very privileged to work on the first release on DVD of all the Universal classic monster and science fiction pictures. And The Creature from the Black Lagoon was especially fun because, unlike the other ones, which were made in the 30s and the 40s, and there weren't too many people to talk to, Creature, you know, kind of dominated Universal's monster schedule for 3 years in the 1950s. And so there were people who worked on the film who I was able to talk to, and Ricou, of course, was the swimming creature. He did that very sexy swimming scene. Julie Adams, I'm sure he's going to tell us all about it. Ben Chapman did the walking creature, the land creature, and all those scenes were done in California. And Julie got to go back and forth though. Oh, that's right. She had a double to do the swimming in Florida. But I guess the first question is, when did you learn how to swim? Did you?
I was a little boy.
You were a little boy, and you grew up in Florida, where?
Yeah, I was born in Florida in Fort Pierce. Lived in Jensen Beach, Florida. Then moved to Tallahassee and lived there quite a while. Then back to Miami, then Fort Lauderdale, and now I'm in a little town called Southwest Ranches, just west of Fort Lauderdale.
So you must have been doing something involving the water when Universal approached you. What were you?
Well, I kind of lucked into the job of the creature. They were looking for a location in Florida to film a film. And the manager of Wakulla Springs, which is just south of Tallahassee, was a friend of mine. And he called me and he said, I'm going out of town and I've got some people from California coming in to go look at the springs as a location for a movie. He said, would you take them there? And I said, sure. So I did. And while we were there, the cameraman said to me, he said, would you mind swimming in front of the camera so we can get some idea of a human being compared to fish, eels, grass and logs and whatever. And I said, sure, so I did. About a week later, I heard back from the manager of the hotel. He said, they're trying to reach you about the movie. And I said, okay. And he said, I'll have them call you. Well, I got a call from Jack Arnold, who turned out to be the director of the film. He said, Ricou, we like the way you swim. How would you like to be an underwater monster? I said, why not? So I got the job. I went to California, spent maybe 2 months. They were making the suit. And they made the suit and it looked awful. It looked like a worm. So they trashed that and they made a second suit. And that's the one that's in the film. And we ran tests in a tank at Universal back lot to make sure that the suit worked fine and that I could show them that I could breathe from an air hose underwater. And then we went to Florida and we started shooting the film at Wakulla Springs.
How was the underwater costume different than the land one? It must have been.
They were identical. The only difference was this: they built my suit first, and then they built Ben Chapman's second. And what they did was they just expanded the chest, because he was 5 inches taller than I am, and it made him in the costume.
Was it fitted over a wetsuit or something, or was it in pieces? Or?
Well, they started out, they put me in a leotard, and then they were going to paint glue on the leotard and glue pieces of the suit on, which they did. And the first piece they put on was a chest plate. And as they were getting other pieces ready, putting glue on my leotard, I told the makeup artist, Jack Keevan, I said, you know, where you put this chest plate, it's getting warm, very warm, very warm. And he said, yeah, it'll be all right. Then I said, well, wait a minute, it's getting hot. And then he said, well, just it'll say, I said, it's getting real hot. And I said, take it off. So they took it off. And I burned my chest. I had 3 big blisters. I have a scar from one of them still.
What was it, from the adhesive?
The glue setting up created heat.
Oh, right.
And that's what caused it. From then on, they built a body cast, and then they built a suit around the body cast, on a leotard on the suit, and finished it that way.
Did you get it? Did they have it in pieces, or was it one suit, apart from the head that you got?
They made me 1 suit, and then backed it up with 3 others that they sent to Wakulla Springs, where we did the underwater shooting. And I think I tore up 3 suits, swimming and fighting and whatever. And we used up all 3 of the suits while I was shooting scenes underwater in Wakala.
It was only the beginning of the creature's career because you came back for 2 years and did two.
Yeah, we did two other films, Revenge of the Creature and The Creature Walks Among Us. And in The Revenge of the Creature, Tom Hennessy played the topside creature and I was the underwater creature. The reason they used two creatures was Ben Chapman was 5 inches taller than I was, and so was Tom Hennessy. They wanted the creature to look big, and I wasn't as tall as they wanted me to be. In the third film, Don McGowan played the same part, and he's a pretty big guy too.
The creature really is one of the most, even though it's a horrifying monster, it's one of the most beautifully designed monsters I think that ever came out of Hollywood. It's just it's surprising that it went through this really awful version that didn't work. And I've seen pictures of it. Actually, you can glimpse it in the DVD documentary. The face looks nothing like the Gill Man we know and love. Did you get to? Was it all designed before you? Aside from the face, was it all ready to go, or did you get to talk to Bud Westmore and Millicent Patrick and any of those people?
Yes, Bud Westmore was the head of the makeup department, so he got credit for the entire building of the suit. But the actual guy that did most of the work was Jack Keevan, who was a makeup artist, and Chris Mueller, who was a modeler. They did most of the work. The lady I saw twice, once in a room we talked, and the other time she was out on the back lot on the tank where we were testing the suit. She was painting something on the suit, I don't know what, and that's the last I saw her. The suit was perfect except for the eyes. We tried to wear a face mask, but it stuck out too far. And then I got where I was wearing goggles, but when the goggles filled up with water, you couldn't get rid of the water. So I went with the naked eye, and the eye sat about an inch away from my eye, so it was kind of looking underwater, blurry, through a keyhole about an inch away from your face. So vision was one of the worst things I had wearing the suit and acting in the film.
How long did you have to wear it? What was the longest stretch that they...
Well, I would actually wear it all day long in the sense of we'd go to work probably at 8 or 9 in the morning, and we'd go out on the springs on a barge, and we would rehearse a scene, and we'd go underwater and then attempt to create what we rehearsed. If not, we'd come up and rehearse it again, go back down and try again. We had a director, Mr. Havens, and the only problem was that he couldn't swim. So he was in an inner tube up on the surface with a face mask looking down, watching the cameraman and myself do whatever we had rehearsed up on the barge. He was a real nice man, and but he just couldn't swim.
Now, the cameras themselves, in those days, they used a rig that had two 35mm cameras that were synchronized. What did they have to do to waterproof them and keep them underwater?
Well, Scotty Welburn, who was the cameraman, they had, as you said, two 35mm cameras side by side. And he built a housing around all of those. And it worked perfectly, however, it flooded twice. And they had to fix the cameras and the tank and the housing like 3 or 4 days, and then we'd go back shooting again. So it happened twice while we were filming at Wakala Springs.
Now, in The Revenge of the Creature, it was basically the same costume as the original, but they made modifications for the third one. How did that affect the way you wore it or were able to move? It was bulkier looking.
Well, as far as I was concerned, the suit was all exactly the same, with the exception in the third one, after they operated on the creature, supposedly took his gills off. Then it was a little bit different. But it was the same up until that point.
Now, the creature from the Black Lagoon came out in the midst of a big, I mean, we were so used to 3D pictures today that some of us might forget that they weren't always around. And there was a period of a few years in Hollywood where they were very, very popular. And 1954, when Creature came out, there were also films like House of Wax with Vincent Price. And did you see a lot of those 3D films?
Have I seen them?
Did you, when they were first released?
Yes, I did. The Creature was released in 3D, but I think it was only released in 3D for a couple of weeks because it was so poorly projected and people's eyes bothered them so much. They then showed it single strip for the rest of the year. And I think the other films were only shown single strip, not in 3D.
Was Revenge shot in 3D but released?
All three films were shot in 3D.
That was 54, 55, and 56. And after that, the whole novelty of 3D pictures kind of wore off. This was a different process, though. Before there were films that were made with the red and green glasses, and they were really hard on the eyes to sit through. But Creature and the other big studio films were made with a Polaroid process, so you didn't get the color distortions, and you didn't get. Ideally, you didn't get seasick watching the films, but it was. Hollywood was trying to compete with television. They were afraid television was going to take too much of the market share, of entertainment, and so things like 3D and CinemaScope and other gimmicky things were done. And after a while, Hollywood made its peace, I guess, with TV and the competition, and now it's all Hollywood's all just one thing across the boards. Now, Creature was very, very popular when it came out. All three of them were.
I don't know. I went to the theater and paid to get in.
Oh my God!
In Ocala, Florida, and I saw the film.
Some things at Universal never change. I had to buy the Blu-ray set for myself.
Anyway, I paid to get in, and I enjoyed the film. And I would say after that, maybe 20 years passed, and I'd get a few letters, and people would ask for a picture to autograph, and I didn't have any pictures. And finally I got one picture, and I started signing them and sending them to people. And gradually I've accumulated maybe 200 different pictures that I now sign and people want. But in the beginning, I didn't realize that the film was popular again. But it seems to me that it's more popular now than it was then. And I earn more money sitting at one of these shows than I did in making a film.
Good for you. No, that's, many people are, in Hollywood are just, they're making a living, and they don't know, especially a lot of the people in the Universal monster pictures had no idea that what they were doing was going to be considered a classic someday. And these films have lasted longer than many others. There are all kinds of stars and matinee idols who are long forgotten and are very obscure, but those monsters really have stayed with us. I bet there must have been a lot of confusion, because when you're signing pictures, people must have given you pictures of Ben Chapman all the time to sign. How did you deal with that?
Well, I didn't. Someone would come up with a picture with apparently Ben walking on land, and they'd ask me to sign it, and I'd sign it. A creature's a creature. And then I would hear from Ben that he was angry because I signed his picture. But I wrote him a note and I said, "You can sign mine, I don't mind." A funny story, when we were shooting at Waterloo Springs, it was wintertime. The water temperature there was 71 degrees, and the air temperature at that time was 49. So we'd go to work early in the morning, and when I had the suit on and it was dry, I was pretty warm. I didn't get cold. But when we went in the water and we swam and did a scene and came back out of the water, gradually this water would become real cold in the suit. And I'd start shivering. And I'd have the head off, but I'd leave the feet on and the hands on. Well, a number of members of the crew felt sorry for me, so they would come up and ask me if I'd like a little drink of brandy. I said, "We sure would." So each one that gave me one didn't know the other had given me one. So there was a drunk creature for a while. So they stopped doing that.
Can you spot any particular scene where you seem to be drunk?
No.
Oh, good. Now, we seem to have several generations of people out here. You must have all come in contact with the creature for the first time at different times in your lives. And I see we have some people lined up who have some questions. So why don't we open up the conversation a bit? And yes, sir.
Yes, hello. My name's Alex Ratliff. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you for coming to Pensacola. I know it's not every day that any of us get to meet a real universal monster in the flesh. So, my first quick question is, I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, that like the original suit, I guess whatever Universal, when they were done with it, they tossed it. It was found by a janitor because he thought it looked cool for his kid's Halloween costume. And then I guess it's been exchanged hands, or some writer from a monster magazine picked it up or something, or bought it. But have you, since you first wore it, come in contact with the suit ever again? Have you seen it in person again? Or
have you seen the discarded suit? Did you ever come in contact with it again after?
When the films were over, all of the suits were returned back to Universal Studios. And I understand that they hung them up in the back of the makeup room, and that's where they stayed. However, I got a letter from a company in, I think it was New York. They're an auction house, and they said they had a head of mine that I wore in the swimming scenes, and they wanted to sell it, but they wanted to verify that it was my head. And I had no way of knowing. So I told them there was a gentleman in California named Bob Burns who knows as much about the creature as anybody, and maybe they could ask him. So they did, and he did verify that it was one of the heads that I had worn. And they said they'll send me a picture of it and a little message about it, and a check for $500 if I'll say it was my head. I received it, and I looked at it, and the head looked like this bottle. It was melting all the way down. It looked horrible, but they were going to sell it. So I took the $500 in cash, and I signed the thing, sent it back to them, and a month later, they auctioned it off for $80,000. Who bought it, what they did with it, I have no idea.
As far as anybody knows, the original abandoned suit it hasn't survived. I've seen Bob Burns has probably more of the original elements than anybody. But there are photographs of it, and there were little models that were constructed, and we used some of them in the documentary Back to the Black Lagoon. You can take a look at them, and see Bud Westmore and other people. I think there's one with you and the alternate.
Yeah. I had at home. It's a remake, but it looks identical to the heads that we actually wore. But it's only about 10 or 15 years old. But it hasn't rubber rotted yet, but it's in pretty good shape.
I just have one more quick question. I also read that The Revenge of the Creature was Clint Eastwood's first movie. Did you ever get a chance to meet him? And if you did, what was your, what did you think of him?
Did you meet Clint Eastwood during Revenge of the Creature?
No, in The Revenge of the Creature, Clint Eastwood did his scene in California, and all of my scenes were done in Florida. But I think he's done quite well for himself. A story about The Revenge of the Creature, the studios, not just Universal, but most of them, are a big bunch of phonies. And the reason I say this, not from just the Creature movies, but other movies that I worked on and done. But on the Creature movie, I got a call from The Revenge of the Creature. I got a call from Jack Arnold, the director, and he said, Rico, we're making another Creature film, and we'd like you to do the swimming in it. I said, great. I said, you want me to come out to California and have the suit made? He says, no. He says, we're in Marineland Studios in St. Augustine, Florida, and we're shooting. And he said, I said, well, I don't have a suit. He said, well, they hired somebody else to do the underwater swimming, but he can't swim well, and we need you. And I said, well, I still don't have a suit. They said, well, when you come down here, we'll cut his down to fit you. So I said, oh, okay. So I went down there, and they spent about 3 or 4 days remodeling the suit to fit me, because he was much taller than I am. And we began shooting, and we shot the film. But they don't care, they don't think about rehiring anybody for anything.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Matt. Thank you for taking my question. I've always been a huge fan of all the Universal monster films since I was a kid, because my dad grew up watching them as a kid in the 50s and 60s. And obviously there was a lot of great, characters like Frankenstein, Dracula, the Invisible Man. But you were always my favorite growing up, like the Creature was. And my question is what's it like being part of that legacy of Universal monsters? The original 50s, 30s, 40s, 60s, or 30s, 40s, 50s movies that people still to this day love and watch all the time.
What does it feel like to be part of the Universal monster tradition? I guess more pointedly, what does it feel like to be the last Universal monster standing?
Well, I've got a few more days left, I hope.
For anybody who wants to touch the Universal era, there aren't many people. There's you, there's Julie Adams, who still makes
Julie
appearances.
Adams and myself are the only 2 left alive from the Creature films. And I do shows with her frequently, and she's a great lady, and we get along beautifully.
Yeah, we just lost 2 of the actresses in recent years. Just last year, Lupita Tovar, who was in the Spanish version of Dracula, died at the age of 105, and a few years before, my dear friend Carla Lemley, who was also in Dracula, passed away. And with that, and they both were like, they were in demand to appear all the time and kind of and answer questions that they couldn't possibly answer. They weren't film historians, and I'm sure you get a lot of questions too, and people expect you to be a film historian, and conversant with all of the minutiae and the details of the studio politics at the time. but you were an actor doing an honest day's work.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. The Creature was one of the shows I worked on and that I do shows about. And I've done other features and other TV shows that I'm as proud or more proud of than I am the Creature films. But I never really get to talk about them or do much about them.
What did you have to do with Flipper?
I created the show Flipper. And I trained Flipper, the first Flipper. And we made actually 3 features, 2 and a third one, and 4 years of television of the Flipper shows. My son, who I have a picture of when I was the Creature, feeding him a bottle of milk that I sell at the table, by the way. Anyway, I trained Flipper with him because the boy that played the part of Sandy in Flipper was Luke Halpin, and Ricky doubled Luke Halpin. Well, while we were training the dolphin, before that, I would say, we went to all the aquariums to try to get a dolphin to play Flipper. And none of the aquariums would even talk to me about it. They would just say, no, we're not interested. Well, we went into the Florida Keys and we met a man named Milton Santini who had caught dolphins for all of the aquariums. And I asked him if he knew where there might be a dolphin that we could use or could he catch us one? He said, well, why don't you go over to my pond over here? I've got one in that pond that I keep there so that when I catch other wild dolphins, I put them in with her and she eats the fish and they see her eating and they learn to eat on their own watching her. And I said, okay, so we went over to this pond and Ivan Torres at that time was with me. And I waded into the water about waist deep by a little dock. And this dolphin swam around and put its head up under my arm. And I could hug it. And I looked up at Ivan and I said, Ivan, we got Flipper. And then I took her over into the other pond with a dog. And I spent about 3 months training Flipper with my son, Ricky. And the hardest scene in the show was the boy had to ride the dolphin. We couldn't figure out how was he going to ride the dolphin. And we trained her to catch a ball, retrieve different items. And I got the bright idea, if I throw the ball and have Ricky jump in the water, maybe she'll retrieve him. So I threw the ball, he jumped in the water, and she couldn't figure out how to get a hold of him. Well, he was wearing a pair of cut-off jeans, and she grabbed one of the belt loops in the jeans and tried to pull him. Well, accidentally, he stuck his hand up and got over her dorsal fin, and immediately she started toying him with her dorsal fin. So I said, boy, we got Flipper. I called Ivan, I said, let's make the movie, we got her. Anyway, and we spent the rest of a couple of months training her to do the other things we needed to show.
We have a few more questions here.
My question is actually a follow-up to what you were just talking about. It seems like in the 40s and 50s, there was an explosion of tourism in Florida around places like Weeki Wachee and Silver Springs and Cypress Gardens, and that all this also fed into the film industry and the TV industry. And in the last couple of decades, all that has kind of disappeared, the old stuff that used to be there. Could you talk a little bit about what it was like since you started in the 40s, seeing and working in this boom in Florida tourism, and then what it's been like as it's kind of contracted in the way that it used to be for these kinds of attractions and these kinds of movies?
Yeah, can you talk about the growth of Florida tourism, places like Cypress Gardens and Wakulla, and what's happened to that over the years?
back in the old days, so to speak, I helped New Perry develop Weeki Wachee Springs. That's where the mermaids swim underwater and breathe from an air hose. It was just a little pool in the road off the highway. And we went in there, and it took us about 2 months to clear the springs of all the garbage that people had thrown in there, from automobiles to sinks to tires, God only knows what else. And then we built the underwater theater and hired some girls that were with Aqua something or another, they called them, at Florida State University, and hired a few of those girls to come down to become the first mermaids. And then we started our mermaid show. At the same time, a friend of mine, who I worked with a great deal, ran Cypress Gardens. And we hired some of their ladies to work in films on water skis. As an example, I used one of their girls in Thunderball for skiing. Cypress Gardens was a show, and it's put on by private people. And Silver Springs was exactly the same. But now the state has bought all of them, and the state owns them and operates them, and they're doing a pretty good job. And I've been back to each one of them since, and enjoyed it.
Yes.
I'm John Avery Jr. First of all, I'd like to say this is a big, huge honor for me. I'm a huge fan of the old Universal monster movies, and I'm a big creature fan. I can watch that movie over and over, never get tired of it, and I always say they stand up and hold their own to anything you put out nowadays.
I think many people would agree with you. He feels that nothing stands up to the Universal monsters.
No.
That they have a special place in the hearts of so many generations of people. Was it something about the studio system, do you think, or the way films were made, that so many characters like that could be created out of one studio?
Well, I think each time they did one, they made money. And that was the important part as far as the studio was concerned. My favorite is the Wolfman. I really enjoyed that.
Which was the, and Lon Chaney, like Ricou, was the only actor to, well, you split the difference with Ben, but the other monsters, after a while were played by anybody they could get. But Lon Chaney Jr. played the Wolfman exclusively, throughout the war years, and then in Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein. And they came back to Ricou again and again. So next to Lon, you have something of a record, kind of a trifecta there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Last question.
Sure.
Do you have a personal favorite of the Creature trilogy?
Which is your favorite of the Creature films?
I think the first one was my favorite. The director, Jack Arnold, he liked the second one best. So everybody had their own taste, I guess, their own flavor. But I thought the first one was done better, and they spent more money on it. And the second one was, I would say, second best. The third one I didn't care for at all.
Yes,
sir. Let me just say, Creature from the Black Lagoon is the best Universal monster movie, period. My question is, and hopefully either one of you can answer it, The Creature Walks Among Us was the only one out of the three trilogy that was not directed by Jack Arnold. Is there a reason why he didn't direct the third film?
Do you know why Jack Arnold didn't come back for the third film?
I'm not sure, but I know that Jack was ill at one time. And I don't know what the illness was, but I know he lost a leg. And it could have been that that was part of the reason. I don't know for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that's the end of the questions there. Well, this is exciting. We're going to see the creature, many of us for the umpteenth time. Is anybody going to see it for the first time here? Hey! I think you're going to enjoy it.
If you see it for the first time and you have any more questions, I'll be at my table tomorrow. Come by and you can ask them and I'll try to answer them.
I think we have another question here.
Yes, you mentioned that there were many projects that you had done over the years that you were kind of more proud of than your work with Creature. Would you mind mentioning a couple of those?
Beyond Flipper, what else were you more proud of than the Creature?
One of the proudest films I've ever made and worked on was called Salty. And I'm sure none of you have seen it. I had a pet sea lion I had at my home for 3 or 4 years and trained it. And my daughter was with me and she helped train it. And she's here tonight. Renee, raise your hand. Raise your hand. And myself and my brother-in-law, who is a writer, wrote a script called Salty about a boy and a sea lion. And we spent maybe 2 years trying to raise money to make the film. Finally got the money out of New York, raised the money and made the film. And we tried to release it, but at that time, G-rated films went downhill. And the R-rated films went up. So it never really got released properly, and it still is one of these days, maybe. But I was more proud of that film than anyone I've worked on.
Tell them about Thunderball.
What about Thunderball?
Thunderball, oh yeah, okay. I was working with Ivan Torres at Ivan Torres Studios in Florida, and we had done a lot of underwater movies with Ivan. And we got a call from Kevin McClory, who was the co-producer of Thunderball. And he said, could you come over to London, and meet with the producers to talk about shooting the underwater scenes for Thunderball. So I said, okie doke, and went over there. And I met Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman. And I expected to meet 2 Englishmen, but I met 2 guys from Chicago, more or less. And they said, why should we hire you to do the underwater scenes in Thunderball? And I said, well, one of the reasons is that we're phonies. Everything we shoot is phony, it's not real, it's unreal. Because they were going to hire Cousteau to shoot. And I said, Cousteau shoots stuff for real. And I don't think your stuff is real. Anyway, they said, okay, you got the job. So we spent 3 or 4 months shooting Thunderball. And the underwater sequences in Thunderball of the battle, it took me about, I'd say, 2 months to shoot it. And the reason I enjoyed doing it is I had no budget. I could spend all the money I needed to do the film. And that was more fun than I've had in any show I've shot.
Any last questions? We have to move on to the film so we can get out of here by the time they want us out. But any last... Well, as Ricou said, we'll be at his table all day tomorrow, and love to see you. And thank you so much. And please enjoy The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Thank you very much.